Undercover boss orders coffee and toast stops cold when the waitress says her paycheck ends before the month does. Sir, this section is reserved. You'll have to move. The sentence wasn't loud or harsh, but cold and blunt, like a soft shove in the middle of a sweltering summer noon. The wall clock above the caf bar had just struck 11:58 a.m. Sunlight poured through the front window, casting a fiery yellow glow over everything inside Meadowview Caf. A typical summer afternoon. An ordinary lunch hour in a quiet suburban town, until that silence was torn apart by a refusal delivered without hesitation. The man sitting by the window didn't respond immediately. He wore a light gray crewneck sweater, a baseball cap pulled low, casting shade over his eyes. He wasn't on a laptop nor scrolling through a phone. Only a small notebook and a worn-out wooden pencil rested in his hands. In front of him, a freshly brewed Americano and a simple plate of toast coffee and toast, the order brought out just 4 minutes earlier. No one in the caf, including the person who asked him to move, knew that this man, Michael Foster, age 50, was the founder of the New Dawn Caf chain, a renowned coffee brand present in over 40 cities across America. And Meadowview Caf was one of the very first locations he personally opened on its launch day 12 years ago. This caf, with its time-worn wooden chairs and the subtle scent of baked goods in the air, used to be the place where he spent hours chatting with customers, sketching expansion plans, and watching his staff serve with their whole hearts. But today he returned not as a founder, but as a stranger, an observer, a true undercover boss. The young woman standing in front of him, Jenna, around 27, wore a beige uniform, arms crossed, eyes devoid of any warmth. She repeated herself for the second time, "Sir, I'll need you to move." That section is usually for regulars. We have a lot of them around noon. Michael looked up at her. His eyes weren't angry, just calm and slightly weary. He nodded gently. Sure. He picked up the cup with both hands as if drawing warmth from the coffee while the air around him grew strangely cold. Then he stood and moved to the small table near the restroom, the one no one ever wanted. No one greeted him. No one smiled. No one recognized that this was the man who had once signed their paychecks, offered them opportunities, and built this place with love. Michael observed silently. There was an elderly man eating lunch alone, gazing blankly out the window. A group of 3 young women pulled their chairs close, whispering about something. Staff behind the counter were busy preparing drinks, but no one smiled. Something was off in the air. Michael pulled out his notebook. The first line on the page read Meadowview. Field check. 12 years. What has changed underneath were bullet points. Customer care. Wait, staff behavior. Cleanliness. Staff morale. Tipping culture. Empathy V's. Routine, the air conditioner hummed lightly, rustling the corner of the page. He wrote the first line, no eye contact. No warmth. Blah. He remembered the early days when staff here used to know every customer's name. They used to remember Mr. Jones takes his coffee black, or Mrs. Marie likes her muffin reheated for 10 seconds. Now just rules and indifference. A new staff member stepped out from the back, Eliza, the brunette server who had delivered Michael's breakfast earlier. When she noticed he had switched tables, she frowned slightly and approached. Eliza, Jenna interrupted, "Just let him be. He already moved." Eliza nodded but cast a discreet glance at Michael, a flicker of concern in her eyes. She placed a small pitcher of water on his table, said nothing, and walked away. A small gesture, but enough for Michael to jot in his notebook, kind eyes. Quiet empathy. Remember her. He took another sip of coffee. The bitterness spread across his tongue. But the true bitterness wasn't in the cup. Not the kind of bitterness that came from the cup of coffee, but from the way a system once so familiar with success was slowly forgetting what it meant to be human. He sat for a while longer, quietly observing. Guests left without tipping. One man dropped a few coins. Another forgot to pay altogether. No one thanked the staff. A pastry was returned for being too cold. The staff didn't argue. They just replaced it and walked away. Michael closed his notebook. On the final page, he wrote peaceful on the outside. exhausted within. And then just a few minutes later, he would hear something from Eliza that would stop him completely. Not because it was angry, not because it was shocking, but because it hit a truth that every CEO needs to hear, though few have the courage to face it. Some time passed. Michael was jotting down final notes in his small notebook when he heard soft footsteps approaching from behind the counter. A young woman returned with an empty tray. Her eyes looked tired, but she managed a faint, practiced smile. "Are you doing okay, sir?" she asked gently, her tone just right, exactly how she'd been trained. Michael looked up. This wasn't Jenna. She wasn't robotic or cold. There was something else, something more real. "Better now," he replied. Then he noticed the small name tag on her apron, Emily. "Thank you for checking, Emily. Let me ask, do you usually eat breakfast here after your shift?" Emily froze for a second. It was a simple question. So, every day, and yet not easy to answer. She glanced around the cafe as if afraid someone might overhear, then lowered her voice. "Honestly, sir, I don't—" A reluctant smile. Then her eyes fell. "Most mornings, I skip it. Can't afford it. My tips this week," she paused, then gave a soft, tired laugh. "Barely cover the electric bill. Breakfast, that's a luxury." Michael said nothing. He set his pen down. The coffee cup in front of him was still warm, but he didn't take another sip. "That's a luxury." A gentle phrase, but it rang like a bronze bell in his mind. In that moment, the world seemed to fall silent. He no longer saw the cafe he once loved, no longer saw the cozy atmosphere he had built for the community. All he saw was a young woman struggling to survive inside the very system he had created. Emily stood there, still trying to be polite. "Sorry, sir. I didn't mean to overshare." Michael looked at her. Not as a CEO, not as a customer, but as a man staring into a truth he could no longer ignore. His system was forcing staff to see breakfast as a luxury. He gave a gentle smile. "Emily, no need to apologize. I appreciate your honesty." She nodded, then turned to leave. And in that very moment, Michael stopped cold. No need for more questions. No need for hidden cameras or payroll confirmation from corporate. Just one sentence: "My tips barely cover the electric bill." That alone told him something had veered off course. Michael opened his notebook and quickly wrote a few lines. "Tipping system not sustainable. Emily speaks truth. Follow up. Breakfast equals unreachable for staff." Then he silently asked himself, if the server can't afford breakfast at the very cafe where she works, then who exactly are we serving? The hum of the espresso machine buzzed behind him. Someone called out a new order. But for Michael, every sound now seemed to fade into silence. He looked around the cafe, every chair, every customer. This place had once been a symbol of pride. Now it was a place where staff had to skip meals while he, the founder, was still being served without compromise. That contrast was too painful, too real, too quiet. And in that very moment, a single sentence from a young woman who had no idea who she was talking to became the spark that would expose everything the numbers had failed to reveal. The satisfaction factor emerged not from comfort, but from that deep discomfort, as the audience began to sense the man in charge was listening, absorbing, and about to do something no one could predict. In Michael's mind, a sequence of decisions began to form. Not punishment, not discipline, but reform from the root. Because if you can't take care of the people who carry your brand each day, then you don't deserve to lead it. Eliza, the server, who had earlier placed the water jug on his table, walked past Emily. She gently brushed her hand. "You okay?" Emily nodded. Michael took mental note: 2 employees. One silent, one brave. Both hurting. Both deserve better. Then a customer's voice rose from the back. "Excuse me, this toast is cold." Emily quickly stepped away, back into the motion of the shift. That professional smile slipped neatly back onto her face. But Michael knew the truth beneath it wouldn't fade so easily. He watched her go, then quietly penned one final line. The smile of the overworked is the quietest scream. And that was the exact moment Michael Foster decided this afternoon the entire system would pivot. Not with words, but with an action no one in the caf would see coming. Michael remained seated. He no longer touched the coffee. His gaze no longer rested on the toast. Instead, he seemed to stare through the space itself, as if each small detail was revealing truths no one had dared speak aloud. From his spot in the corner, he could see the entire layout, one he had personally designed. Every oak wood table, every hanging light with its soft amber glow, all were chosen to create the most memorable morning for the most ordinary people. That had once been the mission. But the reality was an elderly man, likely in his 70s, gently raised his hand. "Excuse me, may I get some more sugar?" No one answered. No one turned around. He asked again. A staff member behind the counter with dyed green hair scrolling on her phone glanced up briefly, then looked away. No apology. No assistance. Michael watched the man's expression closely. There was something hurt. Not because he didn't get sugar, but because he was ignored as if he didn't exist. Then, a delivery truck pulled up. A young man drenched in sweat carried in a crate of milk. Just as he stepped through the door, a voice snapped from behind the counter. "Use the back door, man. You can't just walk in like that." The delivery guy froze, hands still gripping the crate. He didn't respond. Just turned around, shoulders slumped, his uniform soaked with sweat down the back. Michael frowned. Why was rudeness so effortless? Why had kindness become a luxury? Behind the counter, 3 staff members were prepping orders, Emily among them. But 2 others were giggling at a phone screen. One took a selfie. The other mimicked a departing customer's voice. "More sugar, please," she croaked in an elderly tone, then burst out laughing. Emily glanced their way, her eyes disapproving. But she said nothing. Michael stayed seated, silent. But inside, layers of disappointment were piling up. Not over one isolated act, but because the whole atmosphere felt poisoned. He turned a page in his notebook and wrote, "Lack of empathy systemic. Where's the leadership? Frontline culture broken." It wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was evidence. And he knew he couldn't walk away like a ghost. Behind him, a young mother tried to calm her crying toddler. Children, after all, are the most honest judges of a space. And that child wasn't crying from hunger, but because the caf was too cold, too tense, too devoid of comfort. Michael sighed. He had once said at the opening of the first branch, New Dawn Caf was not created to sell coffee. It was created to sell the feeling of being heard, even if just for 5 minutes of stillness. But today, no one was listening to anyone. A group of students walked in. One of them tried to pay with a student discount card, but was turned down. The cashier replied curtly, "Nope, we don't do that anymore. Didn't you read the sign, no explanation?" No smile. Just a cold dismissal, as if they were trouble, as if they didn't deserve basic decency. Michael whispered to himself, if a young student is turned away because someone couldn't spare a smile, then the fault is mine. I failed to teach my system how to be human. The satisfaction factor begins to form, not with a dramatic rescue scene, but by letting the audience witness layer by layer the reality unfolding under the light. Indifferent staff, emotionless management, a fractured system, a founder silently watching his brainchild betray its original values, and the audience begins to whisper to themselves, something's about to happen. He's not going to let this slide. This can't be the end. That is precisely when satisfaction is sparked from the anticipation of something righteous. Michael stands up. No one notices. No one recognizes him. He pulls out his phone. Doesn't make a call. Just opens an internal app, branch operations, internal feedback, and begins to record Meadowview loss of brand essence. Immediate audit required. Requesting shadow review on Linda Garrison, branch manager. Staff training protocol to be evaluated, emotional intelligence modules missing. He pauses, then says one final line recommendation: full undercover protocol. Initiate phase 2. Today. He doesn't wait. No guessing needed. The system had already given him all the answers. Now it was time for him to give back through action. Because the disappointment of a founder when faced with coldness inside the very thing he built with heart is the most dangerous source of strength. The moment Michael hits, send his phone vibrates gently. PHASE2INITIATED. No ringtone. No calls. Everything is pre-programmed from surveillance systems to senior personnel. Michael sets his phone down on the table, still not touching his now cold coffee. 1 minute later, the front glass door creaks open. A man in a delivery uniform steps in, but carries nothing. No one in the caf notices. Except Michael, who catches the small pin on the inner sleeve operations audit tier 2. He's from the special inspection unit. 2 minutes later, a middle-aged woman walks in carrying a canvas bag, pretending to be a customer. 3 minutes after that, a strange college student sits at a table near the counter, opens her laptop, puts on headphones, but in truth, she's recording every sound in the caf. The secret audit system has begun its operation, and no one in the caf has the slightest clue. And they all have just 45 minutes to reveal their true selves. Michael observes everything like a seasoned investigator. But this time, he's not writing anything down. His hand rests on the table, his gaze fixed beyond the counter as if waiting for one final signal, the drop that spills the cup. And there it was.
Swift.
Clear. Undeniable. Emily, the only staff member who had remained calm and even a little kind, was just bringing out a tray of coffee when branch manager Linda Garrison grabbed her by the arm. Who told you to bring that out? We're behind schedule. Focus on online orders. Linda's voice was sharp as steel, not caring that. Customers were watching. Emily froze, then mumbled, "Customers been waiting for 20 minutes. Then let him wait longer. You don't decide anything here. Get back." That last line hit like a slap, not to her face, but to her spirit. Michael squinted. He turned away. He didn't need to look anymore. He had seen enough. He stood up, walked to the counter. No one in the caf noticed. Only Emily saw him, and in her eyes there was a silent question: "Who are you, and why do you see all of this?" Michael said nothing. He simply tapped the counter once, then twice. Emily looked down. A small piece of paper lay just under his hand, light as if it had been placed accidentally but deliberately. She picked it up. Handwritten. "Strong strokes, you were the only one who didn't forget kindness. Meet me at 6:00 p.m. Don't tell anyone. M.F." Michael left. Didn't look back. He left behind a room where the cleansing had already begun. No shouting, no chaos. Just truth. And cameras. He stood up. Slowly. No chair scrape, no cup clatter. But somehow an invisible gravity rippled through the room. A few heads began to turn. He pulled his phone from his coat pocket. This time, it wasn't subtle. He dialed. And this time, he put it on speaker. The line rang once. Then a voice answered. "Alex Crane here." Michael didn't introduce himself. His voice was clear, firm. "This is Michael Foster. I'm currently at the Meadowview branch." The caf paused for a beat. Emily snapped her head toward him, eyes wide in disbelief. Linda Garrison, the branch manager, peeked out from behind the counter, her face drained of color in an instant. Michael kept going. "Lock down this location immediately. Suspend all operations. And summon all staff to Internal Review HQ by 5:00 p.m. No one breathed. Not a whisper. Just the soft chime of the door as one customer quietly stepped backward and left. Michael ended the call. He didn't look at Linda. Didn't acknowledge the team of employees now backing away behind the counter, confused and panicked. He simply walked toward Emily, who stood frozen tray in hand, coffee still undelivered. His gaze softened. His voice low and warm again. "Do you still want to work here?" Emily opened her mouth, but no words came out for a moment. She only nodded slightly, then whispered almost like a confession, If I could learn the right way." Maybe Michael looked straight into those eyes. Clear. Honest. No defense. No ambition. He nodded. Then pulled from his inner coat pocket a slim envelope, no logo, no decoration, just 3 handwritten words in blue ink: INTERNALS, CHOLARS, HAPRA, PPROVD. He handed it to her. "Tomorrow, you'll begin management training officially under my internal scholarship." Emily remained still, holding the envelope. Her eyelids fluttered slightly, as if unsure whether to believe what had just happened. Michael smiled for the first time that morning, because you didn't just serve well, you held on to kindness when others let it go. Linda stepped forward, face pale. Who are you?" Michael turned to her. No raised voice. No accusations. Just a sentence light as air, yet clear enough for the entire caf to hear. "I'm the one who laid the first brick of this caf chain back when people thought a warm space was a luxury. And I'm also the one who will remove the last brick if human values are thrown away." Michael pulled a small key from his blazer pocket. No one knew what was happening until he silently walked to the corner wall where the internal security cabinet was hidden. A soft click echoed as the lock opened. He pressed a red button labeled SILANTLOCKDOWNMANUAL. Within 3 seconds, a mechanical sound came from the front door. The digital lock engaged. The front glass panels turned opaque. The soft, amber lighting shifted to cool white, a gentle but unmistakable signal. "Linda, panicked you. You can't do this. I'm still the branch manager." Michael didn't look at her. He stepped toward the main POS terminal, placed his finger on the embedded founder's fingerprint scanner. The screen changed. A bold message appeared: FOUNDERAUTHORIZATIONFULLA XACUTIVACONTROLGRANTED. The caf fell into complete silence. The remaining staff stepped back, huddled together as if waiting for judgment. Michael spoke each word with clarity, without raising his voice. "I've just transferred all Meadowview operations to direct oversight by Central Executive. All security cameras are now streaming to HQ. Every action from this moment forward is being logged under an internal investigation file." He pulled a handheld printer from the side pocket of his bag. Not a toy, but a high-grade audit device. One tap. A series of beeps. A roll of paper began to print. On it, average tip per shift, customer complaint ratios, unprocessed staff, time off hours, and the last 3 months of declining revenue. Michael tore off the sheet and handed it to Linda. "This report was generated by your own shift data. And the silence from customers is reflected in these numbers too." Linda said nothing. Her face had gone pale. Her hands trembled as she held the printed sheet, but she couldn't read a single word. Michael turned back to look at Emily, still standing quietly near his table.
She wasn't sure whether to step away or stay put.
He nodded gently. "You're the only one here who doesn't have to bow your head today." A soft ding. An internal message had just been sent to every staff tablet. Meadowview branch closed for staff evaluation. Customers redirected to neighboring branches. All employees to report to HQ by 4:30 p.m. Michael turned toward the counter. He looked at the rest of the staff. None dared to look away. "If anyone feels they no longer align with New Dawn's values, you're free to leave." Now. No footsteps. No one moved. Within 10 minutes, all operations at Meadowview Caf were suspended. On the glass front door, red letters lit up electronically: TEMPORAIRILYCLOSADINTERNALINPROGRESS. All staff were instructed to turn off handheld devices, step away from their stations, and assemble in the left hallway, where a surprise audit team arrived in matching gray uniforms, vests, embroidered with the emblem New Dawn Compliance Division. Michael Foster now stood at the center of the caf, no longer just a silent man in a gray sweater. He was the living embodiment of the brand values he had built from the ground up. He stepped onto a small platform near the espresso machine where every gaze gathered and every whisper fell silent. His voice rang out deep but steady. I'm Michael Foster. I laid the first brick of the new Dawn calf chain. I'm not saying these words to shame anyone. I say them because I, too, feel the need to bow my head to our customers today. A chair creaked softly in the back as if someone straightened their posture to listen more intently. Michael raised his hand, pointing toward the remaining guests, an elderly woman with silver hair, a little boy, and his mother, a delivery driver who still hadn't left. These people, they're not just orders, not target metrics. They are the reason we exist. And when I heard a young waitress say her tips aren't enough to buy a proper breakfast, I knew this system must stop.
So it can start again.
No laughter, no applause, just stillness. Michael turned toward the bar where Linda Garrison, the branch manager, had just been summoned back. He didn't interrogate her. He simply handed over a short signed document printed on the spot, effective immediately, branch manager dismissal, section 7, brand integrity violation. Linda took it, hands shaking. Michael spoke without anger, not because you're a bad person, but because you allowed bad things to become routine. Leadership isn't about control. It's about inspiration. And you forgot that? He turned to the remaining staff. His gaze was not commanding, but awakening. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. If you still want to stay, be at the headquarters auditorium. We'll begin again. From the way we smile, from the way we say thank you, from the way we serve as if every person in front of us were family. Outside, a gentle breeze passed through. A few customers quietly stepped out. No one was angry. No one shouted. They left the caf with calm faces, but filled with something rare, a quiet sense of satisfaction, as if they had just witnessed something extraordinary, a leader who actually took responsibility. Emily was still standing by the door watching Michael. In her hand was the scholarship envelope. No one was holding her hand. No one told her to smile, but her lips curved gently for the first time that morning. A real smile. Just as Michael stepped down from the platform, a voice called out from the back row, soft but loud enough to echo through the stillness of the caf. Mr. Foster, wait a moment. It was the elderly man over 70, the same customer who had been ignored when he asked for more sugar. He slowly rose, leaning on a dark mahogany cane. His voice was raspy with emotion. I used to think the days of bosses who knew how to bow were gone. But this morning I saw there's someone who still remembers who he is. The room fell silent again. Then the old man walked toward Michael. Not quickly, but with purpose. He pulled out a worn envelope from his coat, its edges frayed with time, and placed it gently on the counter before Michael. These are new Dawn shares I've held since the company's first IPO. Not for the value, but because I believed in you. And today, that belief was confirmed. He turned to face the rest of the staff, still frozen in place. You all work for a man who doesn't fear admitting when he's wrong. That's a gift not every generation gets. He smiled, not mockingly, but with warmth, as if passing down something truly precious. Michael slowly accepted the envelope, and his gaze, no longer that of a founder burdened with anger, became the look of someone reminded of why he began in the first place. He spoke softly, almost a whisper, but every word reached the deepest part of the room. Thank you for not withdrawing your faith in me when I nearly lost it myself. Then he turned to the compliance team. Note, honorary shareholder special advisory privileges. Name Harold Kim. No cross-checking necessary. The team nodded and swiftly recorded it. Emily stepped forward from the doorway, her eyes still glistening. She looked at the old man and nodded as if to say, thank you for saying what we all felt. A young employee, the one who had laughed earlier behind the counter, quietly approached and placed his staff badge on the counter. I need to relearn everything. If there's still space tomorrow, I'd like to show up. Michael said nothing. He simply placed his hand over the badge and slid it back toward him. Tomorrow. 6 a.m. Not a minute late. A young customer stepped forward and asked softly, are you really the founder? Michael smiled. This time, it was a gentle smile without weight, without anger. I used to be the founder. But this morning, I was just a customer coming to see the place I once called home. The young man said nothing more. But after a pause, he pulled out his wallet and quietly placed $100 tip on the table, leaving everyone stunned. He said, "Not for the coffee, but because I just witnessed how a business should be run." Michael slowly made his way to the door. His hand touched the brass handle, but then he paused. He turned around, not as a CEO, but as a father watching a child struggle to stand up in a complicated world. Emily was still standing there. The scholarship envelope had been carefully tucked into her apron pocket. She bowed her head slightly, her eyes not daring to look up. Michael didn't call her name. He didn't give an order. He didn't deliver a lecture. He simply stepped forward gently and spoke in a calm but steady voice. "You're not wrong for speaking up. You were right because you dared to tell the truth." A moment of silence fell, not one of awkwardness, but the stillness that comes when truth is finally acknowledged and courage is finally given its rightful place. From the corner of the café, a single clap rang out. Slow. Clear. Then another. And another. Within seconds, the whole café stood up. No one told them to. No instructions were given. The applause wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic, but it rolled through the room like a wave breaking through years of hardened indifference. No one clapped because he was the CEO. They clapped because someone had finally heard the voice that society always ignored. Michael turned open the door and stepped out. The midday sun cast its light on the sign above the glass door, Meadowview Cafe. A name that was once a symbol but had slowly faded beneath profits and neglect. Now, for the first time that day, that sunlight made the sign glisten like new again. Social pain is not some abstract idea. It's not in the evening news. It's not on social media. It's right here in the quiet sighs behind the caf counter every morning, every noon, every closing shift. And justice is not a slogan on the wall. It must live in every slice of toast, every drop of coffee, and in the way we treat the quietest server in the room.